Today, we're going to try and unlock the geopolitical code of South America by looking at the one thing that has shaped it more than anything else, its fundamental geography. So, what if I told you that a continent's entire fate was basically sealed by its physical shape? Let's dive in and see how South America's form has pretty much dictated its history, its economy, and all its power struggles. It's a story written not in ink, but in mountains and rivers. To really get a handle on South America, you first have to see it the way the rest of the world does, as a continent that's largely on its own, kind of floating down there in the southern hemisphere. And we're talking about a seriously massive piece of real estate. This landmass covers nearly 18% of our planet's total land area. That is a huge chunk of the globe. Now here's the kicker. South America's only land connection to the rest of the world is this one tiny, rugged little strip of land, the Isthmus of Panama. So what does that really mean? Well, it means that single, narrow land bridge makes the entire continent function like a giant island, just isolated out there in the South Atlantic and South Pacific. And that isolation, it's absolutely key. Okay, let's zoom in on the main character in this whole geographic drama, the Great Andean Mountain Range. It isn't just a feature on the map. It's basically the continent's organizing principle. I mean, just picture it. Millions of years ago, tectonic plates literally slammed into each other, creating this incredible chain of mountains that stretches for over 7,000 kilometers. They didn't just build mountains, they built the very backbone that dictates everything else. So, this one single geological feature has three huge continent-shaping consequences. It divides, it provides, and it irrigates. It's a wall, a treasure chest, and a water pump all in one. Let's break that down. And you can see the results of this everywhere. The mountains create this immense mineral wealth, like copper in Chile, by just pushing it right up to the surface. And at the same time, they force human life to adapt to extreme altitudes, pushing entire capital cities way up into the sky. Now, the next major effect of the Andes is that they create this fundamental imbalance, a sort of geographic inequality between the continent's two coasts, the Atlantic and the Pacific. This comparison really tells a story of geographic destiny. You see, the Andes dump all their water to the east. This gives the Atlantic side these vast navigable river highways that go deep into the heartland. The Pacific coast, well, it gets a steep drop-off and short, useless rivers, basically cutting it off from the interior. And on that Atlantic side, you have these three colossal river systems, the Orinoco, the Amazon, which is the world's largest, and the Plata. They're all born in the Andes and flow east, and they are the lifeblood of the continent, the arteries that carry commerce, culture, and power. Okay, so let's put it all together now. This combination of mountains, rivers, and isolation literally carves the continent into four totally distinct geopolitical zones, and each one has its own unique identity and destiny. First up, you've got the Caribbean North. It's totally cut off from the rest of the continent by the massive, impassable Amazon rainforest. So its focus has always been north, looking out towards the Caribbean Sea and, the United States. Then, of course, you have the Andean nations. For these countries, their entire culture, their economy, their very existence is defined by this high-altitude life and the isolation that comes from living on and being divided by the mountain range itself. Right in the middle is the Amazon. Now, you might think a huge river basin would connect things, right? Not this one. This vast rainforest is a massive natural barrier, a green desert, if you will, that separates the north from the south. And finally, that brings us to the southern cone. This is the temperate, economically vital region that's dominated by that powerful Plata River basin. It's the continent's agricultural and industrial engine room for sure. Okay, so we've laid out all the puzzle pieces, the isolation, the mountain spine, the rivers, these four distinct worlds. Now, let's fit them together and try to find the continent's strategic heart. So where is the center of power? You might be tempted to point to one big country, but the real answer is a bit more complicated. It actually lies in the tension between two huge geographic rivalries that have defined South American history. Geopolitical thinkers basically boiled it down to two fundamental conflicts that are baked right into the map. First, you've got the divide between the connected Atlantic world and the isolated Pacific. And second, there's the rivalry for dominance between those two giant river systems, the Amazon and the Plata. This all leads us to a classic idea in geopolitics called the heartland theory. The basic idea is simple. Whoever controls the central pivot area of a landmass can pretty much control the whole thing. And if you look at South America, there's a very clear candidate. That heartland is Bolivia. Why? Because it is the only place on the entire continent that sits at the physical crossroads of all four great zones: the Andes, the Amazon Basin, the Plata Basin, and the historic route to the Pacific. It touches everything. But here's the ultimate geographic irony, the biggest paradox of all. The strategic heart of South America, the place that should be its most powerful pivot point, is actually one of its poorest and least powerful nations. Because it's landlocked and can't project any power, Bolivia became a pawn in the great game between its neighbors, Brazil and Argentina, instead of a king. And that really leaves us with a huge question, doesn't it? If geography is destiny, can a nation or an entire continent ever truly escape its own map? It reminds you that having a strategic position is one thing, but actually being able to use it, well, that's another thing entirely. Something to think about next time you look at a world map.